Shri Varun Gandhi.
Sir, I'd like to start by congratulating our Honourable Railway Minister on the occasion of his maiden budget, and I hope that it's the first of many for him. So the railway budget presented days ago marks an important day in our calendar, not just because it presents the onset of the budget, but because it actually keeps alive a 90-year-old tradition of a separate Indian railway budget. This is something that I didn't know before I was researching it, but the first standalone Indian railway budget actually happened in 1924, when it constituted 85% of the general budget, unlike now when it constitutes 4% of the general budget. So I don't need to describe the enormity and the importance of the Indian railways. I just want to say that 23 million people a day travel on the Indian railways, which is equivalent to the population of Australia and New Zealand put together. So one of the great aspects of this budget is that it's an entirely depoliticized budget, as I understand it. One of the aspects of our political calendar, sir, is that in some aspect or another, we always are confronted with elections in our country. Sometimes Zilla Parishad, Panchayat elections, Vidhan Sabha, Lok Sabha. So in some shape or form, all of us are at some point or another preparing for one election or another. And so there is sometimes a tendency in our financial statements to reach out to some form of electorate somewhere across the country, which is only a natural thing being a political worker. However, in this budget, what I found is that Mr. Prabhu has prioritized fiscal prudence over political considerations, and he's laid greater emphasis on project execution rather than grandstanding. So 99 new line projects worth 60,000 crores were announced in the last 10 years. Out of 99 new line projects, one was completed, a single one, which I find quite odd. I'd like to share an experience with you. When I first became an MP last time from a seat called Pilibhit, one of the main demands of the constituency was to turn the meter gauge line into a broad gauge line. All 5 years of the last budget, it was okayed. But the money that was given for the project was so minuscule because of the amount of projects that were sanctioned that no company would touch it, and therefore it did not become a reality. And I'm sure many other members have had the same experience. So one of the aspects of this budget is that it's laid a lot of emphasis on safety and security. While about 500 people a year die on the tracks itself, so while 1 million deaths may be a statistic, a single death to any of us is a tragedy. And so I like the fact that the railways this time has allocated 127,000 crores over the next 5 years on the issue of safety and security. The greatest killer of men, sir, is unmanned railway crossings, which accounts for 60% of all railway track deaths. And this has been specifically addressed, that over the next 5 years, there will be no unmanned railway crossings. And this is based on the Pitroda Committee and the Kakodkar Committee report. So I think the greatest achievement of this budget is the creation of Trans LOC, which is the logistics corporation created by the ministry, which basically means that from a bulk carrier of commodities, the railway will slowly turn into an end-to-end logistics provider. So therefore, it will become more competitive, and from the point of origin to the point of consumption, it will actually ensure that anybody who manages to travel with them can get the best bang for the buck. It will also end in willing. Also the additional PPP cooperation for end-to-end logistics management at select stations is a very welcome move. I think they're announcing 2 stations per state. I hope my constituency is one of them. One of the issues that the Prime Minister has dealt with is this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and therefore they've started a Swachh Railways Abhiyan, which I think is very important. When former Minister Dinesh Trivedi ji was giving his budget speech, I remember he had said that rail corrosion costs the government around 350 crores a year. And it's a very sad thing, sir, that the poorest amongst us, it leads to open defecation, particularly through night soil on railway tracks, which causes corrosion. And they've given 350 crores as the estimate to how much the railway loses every year. This time through the inclusion of 17,000 bio toilets, I think that this addresses the issue. It also contributes to a cleaner and more hygienic ecosystem in the tracks and the stations. The waste to energy plants near coaching terminals will also add to energy generation. So Mr. Prabhu himself, I think, has been both an environment minister and an energy minister, and therefore there is a greater push for renewables in this budget. They're talking about generating 1,000 megawatts of solar power through solar plants to reduce fuel dependence, and also that it will save 3,000 crores over the next few years through rationalization in electricity purchases. So one of the things that he kept mentioning in his budget was the improvement of the passenger experience. The fact that all of us travel via the railways, but it's not always the nicest experience. And I think that this time there's been a 67% increase in outlay, in budget outlay towards this, which is greatly appreciated. So one of the things that has been discussed a lot in the media is the high-speed networks. And I think the most important thing is that if inter-metro journeys now become overnight 12-hour journeys, it'll lead to a lot of saving of productive time. It's very convenient, frankly. They will increase the speeds from 130 kilometers an hour to 200 kilometers an hour for passenger trains, and more importantly for goods trains. They are looking at increasing the speeds for 100 kilometers an hour and 75 kilometers an hour when loaded to almost 30 to 40 kilometers more. What that will in fact do, sir, is it will increase the attractiveness of the railways for freight. It will also actually make the railways competitive in every way, which it's losing day by day. My only question for the rail minister is that China, which has undertaken a huge high-speed railway project, is actually losing $1.5 billion a year on this high-speed rail. So in fact, is it financially competitive? Is it something that India can afford as a relatively poor country? That's just a question I had in my mind. What do the numbers speak, sir? The important numbers in this budget, I think one of the important numbers is the operating ratio. And so therefore, the lower it is, the better it is for it. And this time we've got an operating ratio which is defined as percentage of revenues which are spent as operating expenses. So we've got the best operating ratio this time actually in 2.5 decades, which is 92.5%. And I think that the next year they're projecting an operating ratio of 86%, which is indeed very, very good. So the plan outlay shows 52% increase and investments growth at 84% increase across 77 new projects.
Please conclude.
Sir?
Please conclude.
In 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And what this in fact means is it exhibits the resolve to improve railway infrastructure, that we're now investing more, not just in laying new tracks and new lines, but improving existing infrastructure into our railways. Lastly, sir, the working expenses that are up by 9.6% are also coupled with a 15.3% increase in gross traffic receipts, so which shows an improved OPEX management despite higher lease charges and interest payments. So I just want to conclude in saying that when the railway budget was being produced, I saw a lot of editorials in papers, etc., which were talking about things like privatization of railways or breaking up of this monolith into Eastern Railways and Konkan Railways. And that led to a lot of fear in my mind, both as a consumer and as a patriot, that how will this going forward, because there are 15 lakh people who at any one time can go on strike if their jobs are threatened. Also, I think rather than privatizing, rather than selling off our family silver, if we can just improve what we have and create a vision in the future of what we have, which is what this budget has sought to do, I think it's a step in the right direction. I'd like to congratulate the government for doing so. Thank you.